Welcome. Good morning. We're at a special edition of ONV Truth in Politics. Now, we have a video that's going to put our conversation in perspective before we get into this conversation this morning. So we're going to watch this video, and then we're going to come back and talk to some very special guests that we have in the studio this morning. Let's watch this video real quick.
We will raise our cry, and we will call for change, because nothing less would be a betrayal of our sacred commitment.
We are here. We are the poor and dispossessed, and we are here.
Until children are protected, sick folk are healed, low-wage workers are paid, immigrants are treated fairly, affordable houses are provided, until saving the world and diplomacy and living in peace is more important than blowing up the world. We won't be silent anymore. If we've got to march, we'll march. If we've got to engage in nonviolent direct action, we'll engage. If we have to ask workers to make election day a labor strike day, we'll do it. But until then, we won't be silent or unseen or unheard
That was a very powerful video. We're here this morning for a very special occasion, something that's coming up this Saturday, March 2nd, in Indianapolis. It's the Mass Poor People and Low Wages State House Assembly to the polls. We have some special guests. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we're going to get into this conversation. Introduce yourself, and we're going to go down the line. Everybody introduce yourself and tell us what part you're doing in this operation.
Good morning. I'm the Apostle Dr. Junius B. Presley, Bread from Heaven Ministries, and we are affiliated with the Indiana Poor People's Campaign, and we're here to promote and to advocate on behalf of the poor in the state of Indiana.
All right.
I'm Linda Durril. I'm a community advocate. My role with the Poor People's Campaign, I learned that we are the trenchers in Northeast Indiana for the Indiana Poor People's Low Wage Advocacy March to the Polls. And I'm looking forward to explaining more about why we need to lead everybody to the polls.
Apostle Dr. Frederick Forde, and I am founder of Point to Christ Kingdom Ministries here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, part of Indiana Poor People's Campaign, and part of the clergy from Indiana who will be representing our city and our state.
All right. We thank you all for being here. We're glad you came to our platform to get your message out. Now, the Poor People's Campaign. Now, I'm a little familiar with it, and I just want to ask so we can do and get people more acclimated or familiar with it. Now, Dr. Martin Luther King in 1968, he had a Poor People's Campaign. Is this an extension or a branch of it, or is it a new conception of the Poor People's Campaign?
I'm glad you brought that up since this is Black History Month. Yes, Dr. King, in his last book that he wrote, Where Do We Go From Here, talked about galvanizing this country with a Poor People's Campaign. Mm-hmm. It was his idea that if we brought the poor together, we would be able to solve many of the racial, social, and economic problems, in our country. And what Dr. William Barber has done, he's also one of the former board members of the National NAACP. Mm-hmm. After leaving the National NAACP, he started this campaign through an organization that he started called Repairer of the Breach. Mm-hmm. And it's out of the Repairer of the Breach that the Poor People's Campaign was initiated. And it is moving. It's a movement. Uh-huh. It's not just an event.
Right.
It is actually a movement that is changing lives. And one of the keys about this Poor People's Campaign, compared to other movements, is that Dr. Barber felt that we got to go into the areas of the poor, and we got to get the poor to begin to talk about their issues. So the Poor People's Campaign has been developing people that are in the poor and disenfranchised communities. They are speaking up now on their own behalf.
Yes.
I wanted to add to that. You asked about Dr. Martin Luther King and the founding of the Poor People's Campaign. He wanted like-minded people to talk to each other. During the era of the 60s, there was the black issue and the white issue, and the point is we have the same issue.
True.
And
That's
so
true.
that
That's
was
true.
a galvanizing force to bring people together and to move it forward. So it's been almost 8 years now that Dr. Liz Theo Harris and Reverend Dr. Barber got together and said we need to revitalize this. So they've both experienced, they meaning the co-chairs now, have experienced homelessness, poverty themselves. So they started the Moral Monday. Dr. Presley mentioned that Dr. Barber used to be the NAACP state president in North Carolina. So he just got people talking to each other about the effect of poverty. And if you look at the landscape of elected officials now, and in the past, you seldom hear them talk about poverty and its impact on everyday issues. You know, the fourth leading cause of death is poverty.
Yeah, and that's amazing. I just noticed that as of April 2023, poverty is the fourth leading cause of death in the United States. And I never put that in that perspective. I would have never thought to look at poverty as a cause of death. You wouldn't put that. You think, violence, you think of accidents, you think of cancer, you think of medical issues. Never would I have assumed or thought that poverty was up there with the cause of death. And that's sad for the country in which we live in. We say we're one of the greatest countries in the world, but this is one of our situations.
Yes.
And before the pandemic, 140 million Americans were living in poverty. And one of the things that Dr. Barbara does is he does not want the politicians speaking for this movement. He wants to have those who are impoverished, those who are on the bottom of the totem pole, to speak about their experiences. And in doing that, it allows everyone to begin to understand how critical and how crucial this situation really is. And one of the slogans is that we move from the bottom up, not the top down.
Right. And being that this is a highly contested political year, we're going into our, we just had our local election, and our mayor got in his fifth term, and now we're going into the federal election, the presidency, and it's really iffy right now. But with that, how important, and you mentioned it, Dr. Presley, and I think you did too, Dr. Forde, where we're talking about that now these politicians, they are way removed from where the poor people are now. Most of them came from a well-off background, and being in their positions, they became better well-off. So they're not, so how do we reach those people, or what's the goal to reach the people to understand the connection, because they don't have a connection or a relevance to the Poor People's Campaign or poor people?
I think one of the ways that we have to beef up, we have to move into what we call elevated community engagement. We have to elevate our engagement. When I was president of the NAACP, when we talked about voting, we only concentrated on register to vote, educate them to vote, and then get out the vote.
Yes.
Now you have to be more elevated, and you have to bring the issues to those that you want to vote. For an example, I'm an environmental consultant. 10 million people in the United States of America are for clean energy. But guess what? That 10 million don't go to the polls and vote.
Oh, wow.
I mean, you say you want clean air. You're a registered voter,
Right.
but you don't vote for individuals that's standing up for the situation. So you have to take the issues to them. You got to bring it down to the cookie, put it on the kitchen table. And in Indiana, what we try to do is we bring the information. Most people don't know. In Indiana, we have 2.9 million poor people in this state.
Wow.
Yes,
Of
sir.
that 2.9 million, 29% are veterans like me.
Oh, wow. Wow.
We got veterans standing in the poverty line, can't pay the utility
Right.
bills, can't put food on the table. You look around Fort Wayne and you look at who's standing in line getting food. Most of them are veterans. I was coming here this morning. There was a disabled veteran standing on the corner begging for money so that he can live. So poverty is something, as Dr. Forde said, nobody wants to talk about poverty.
Right. That's just
But
true.
guess what? When you have a mother or a father that is sick and they can't take care of themselves, guess where the responsibility comes to? It comes to another family
Right,
member.
right.
And because it comes to the family member, that mother or father may have worked all of their lives earning good money, but because they got sick, now they're in what they call poverty.
Yes.
I want to address the fact that Linda and I went to Washington, D.C. to address your thing there that you said, how do we get the politicians to understand?
Right.
We went, had an appointment with Jim Banks, with Todd,
Yes.
and Mike Braun.
Right.
Todd didn't show up.
Oh, wow.
Banks didn't show up. And these were appointments that were previously set. Braun showed up,
Yes, he did.
and we spoke to him. And the first thing out of his mouth was, I didn't know nothing about the Poor People's Campaign. Well, by the time we got finished, he knew about it.
That's what you need. That's what you
And
need.
the next thing he wanted to say was, well, why don't y'all meet me in my office in Indiana? Well, that hasn't even transpired yet.
And he's now running for governor.
Yes,
And
he's
he's running for governor of this state.
You know, and not to throw shade, but we need to unveil these things to the people as they're going to these polls. You need to know what the politicians that you're voting for stand for. And as you said, Dr. Presley, a lot of us don't vote for things that we say we care about. We need to unveil and say that, well, this governor, he's running for your governor, he didn't vote for this or he didn't support this or whatever elected official that they're running office they're running for. We need to let people know that this is what they stand for or what they don't stand for. And that's sad that they don't understand. I'm not saying they don't understand, but they don't try to understand the plight of the poor people. In Indiana, Fort Wayne, the median income is around $29,000 a year. That's a median income. It's not much better in the state. The state is just about $31,000 a year. That is not a whole lot of money for people to survive on.
Right. And not only that, you got a median income of $29,000, but Indiana has not changed its minimum wage law from $7 and what, 25 cents an hour?
$7.25 an hour.
An hour. Yeah, and you have people, and you wonder why people are not wanting to go back to work after COVID. They can't make ends meet at $7.25 an hour.
That's so true.
And we have been advocating through the Poor People's Campaign, we at least want a minimum of $15 an hour. But in reality, you need at least $24 to $25 an hour to really make it in this society because of the increase of inflation on food, gas. Now watch this. Here in Indiana, we have utility companies, right? They get in the back room and they look at how can we squeeze these people. You got water bill, utilities going up. You got your gas going up. You have what else? You have your electric bills going up. And then on top of that, your county want to throw property taxes on top of you. So if you add up your expenditures, you're looking at 25 to 30% of your income going towards the necessities of life. And if I decide to go get a mortgage,
Right.
the mortgage company don't want me to have over 25% of my income in debt.
Right.
That's right.
But they don't look at your utilities.
That's right.
Now, I wanted to comment, though, not necessarily on all the facts, because we have quite a few facts that we need to share with people in general, but the fact that we, us sitting at the table, need to be translators. So, for example, we're talking about the health issues that deal with climate change and ecological devastation. That's the language we use in the campaign. But when you're talking to people who just want to know, what are you talking about? We need to be focusing on the health impacts of poverty. For example, if your child has asthma, if your child is coughing, is not doing well in school,
Right.
we, all of us, need to be translators to not just make people understand, but to share and participate and walk alongside people to understand that the air quality
Right. Right.
is horrible.
Yes.
Yeah.
The chemicals that, or what do they call it?
Petrol, yeah.
Permanent chemicals are going in your child's body. What does that have to do with voting? See, that's, I think, is the disconnect, that people are dealing with everyday issues and not connecting the dots with the voting. So we were just, all three of us were just at the State House Monday, and the state bills that deal with health issues or ecological issues, the permanent chemicals. So that's why our movement is Poor People and Low Wage Assembly to the state houses and to the polls, because so much of the national media focus on Congress, U.S. Congress, U.S. senators.
Right.
The day-to-day money that comes from national can be flipped
Right.
Absolutely.
on the state level. And we are not, well, I mean, thus at the table, we know because we monitor bills. We track them. We have a report card of how these elected officials in our state are acting on our behalf or not on our behalf. But I really hope that this start on Saturday, March 2nd, is the start of our 41 weeks of advocacy. That's our goal, advocacy and to the polls, pointing out the atrocities of the climate change and how it's affecting your child's health, pointing out how we are having a non-living wage
Right.
and how that's affecting you and keeping you in poverty. So, like I said, this March 2nd is the start of the 41-week advocacy to the polls. And so it's just one thing. I mean, more to come will be the candidates forum. More to come will be what we've done traditionally, get out the vote. More to come will be voter education. But we have to have a starting point, and we need to let people know that this is the start. So much of our movement in the Poor People's Campaign, folks focus on the songs, we will overcome.
Right. Right.
That is the start. That is the energy. That is the power movement to get us connected. But I really want to emphasize this is the start of a 41 week of advocacy and making it to the polls and making us aware and sharing. Those of us at the table here, we know the facts, we know the impact, but how are we getting that message out?
And people have to understand the features and benefits of things. If they don't understand how it applies to their lives, they're not going to move. They're not going to operate, and they are not going to vote. And you have to understand who are the politicians that are concerned with what you are concerned with?
Right.
Who are the politicians that are concerned about your family and how they're living and how the things that they have or do not have? And so that is why it is so vitally important to vote, to get out there. Now people say, my vote don't matter. Yes, it does. It absolutely, unequivocally matters to your personal family. And we are not here just for ourselves. We are here because we want it better for our children,
Come on, Dr.
our
Yes.
grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and our unborn children. We want to leave a better life for them in the years to come.
Yeah, that,
And you know, Dr. Forde, you're bringing up a very specific situation. In Dr. King's book, Where Do We Go From Here? Dr. King specifically laid out the blueprint that we in our communities, we have everything we need in order to succeed. We have businesses, we got churches, we have sororities, we got fraternities. We have all of these institutions in our community, but we're not talking to one another.
Right.
Exactly.
We're just laying back, thinking everything is going to be okay, and we don't have to be involved. We got to engage every area
That's
that we are involved with.
On every
you know,
level.
if I'm with the NAACP,
Right,
I'm
right,
going to
right,
give
right.
it all I can. If
That's
I'm
right.
in my fraternity, I got to let my fraternity know. We just got to stop talking just about having a dance event. What about going down to City Hall
Right.
or County Council and dealing with this
Right.
issue?
That's right.
We don't have the institution of the church. The institution of the church is where most people are in front of a leader. What is that leader saying to their members that can't pay their utility bill?
Right.
But then you can get on Facebook and the church is saying, well, I need $1,500 to pay the gas bill for the church. Well, the reason why you need that money because your people are not earning no money and you're not
Exactly.
out there fighting for them
That's
to
right.
get
preach.
$15.
Come
Preach.
on now.
Preach.
$15 an hour.
Preach.
That's
Preach.
right.
Come on.
Preach.
If you're not out there protecting the health of your members, then how you think you're going to get your bills paid in your church or in your business if we're not doing business with one another?
Yeah, and two things that I want to ask on the panel as we that you mentioned. The first thing is, how do we fester that unity? Because it's a lot of factions going on, but there's no holistic movement going on. You got this group over here doing this. You got this group, and sometimes I've noticed, and I'm gonna put it out there. It depends on whose name is at the top
Well,
of, you know. So that's the one thing. But secondly, why do churches just open up to the political parties when it's time for elections? You know, where are the politicians coming to update between times? But answer the first one about the unity.
Yeah, unity is that's a tough thing to take a look at. I was born and raised in segregation. I was born in Virginia. I know what segregation is. So I tell people all the time, I was forged in equality. So I have never forgotten where I came from.
Yes.
Today, because we have people that don't know their history and the history of their fathers, their grandfathers, and they don't talk about what they went through and then try to translate what they're going through today and what they have to do to get up themselves. You know, Dr. King made one statement, and I'll never forget it. He said, a man can't ride your back when you straighten up.
Amen.
Come on now.
Amen.
We got too
Yes,
many
sir.
people
Yes,
letting
sir.
the system ride our back
Oh.
and keeping our people in poverty. We got to straighten up our backs, and we got to get into spaces and open up our mouths. If you don't open up your mouth, you're not going to change anything. And we as apostles, one of our assignments is to open up our mouths, whether you like it or not. We're going to tell you the truth.
Hey,
if
that's
the
what we
church is
need.
out of order, we're going to tell you the
That's
truth.
what we need.
And to add to that, I'm from New York. And when a situation went down for the people, the first people to hit the streets was the clergy. They mobilized the church. They got the church engaged. They talked to all of one another, and all of the clergy together hit the streets. You remember in the time of Martin Luther King, Abernathy was there, all Jesse Jackson was there. All of those clergy were leading the movements. That is something you do not see in Indiana here right
Say a word.
now.
Say a word.
And I remember
I
when
want to speak up on that because this is a time-bound situation. So, for example, if you go with the 80s, what was happening here in the 80s, you can say that. There was collaboration. There was unity among several groups. But I need to fast forward to now, to 2024, and back to your question. How do we establish unity? That is still a lingering question, and it goes with, as you said, it may be the name at the top. People gravitate toward that. And I'm not sure how your listening audience, how long they've been in Fort Wayne and whatever, but over 20 years ago, there was a citywide dialogue on racism right here in Fort Wayne. And one of the things that was a key talking point was why is it that in the black community, media gets a mic and is seeking the black leader? Why? Well, that was a talking point in the Dialogue on Racism forum that, again, it occurred citywide here in Fort Wayne. Why is that the preference from media to have a black male to speak for all of the community?
Right.
Why isn't that? Is that the case in other ethnic groups, that you got to have one person that
No.
speaks for all?
No.
And so back to the unity question. We need to talk to each other. We have silos in this community that in, advocacy days of the 80s didn't happen, but this is 2024. So it's all about getting on the same page, talking to each other, and I'm going to say it evasively, the people who are drunk with power that just show up
Yes, sir.
for media presentation.
Hallelujah.
We need to deal with the drunk with power people
Right.
who are just seeking a title and just ignoring advocacy issues, voting, housing, education.
Right.
I don't have the answer to your question, but I do know once you identify the problem, which is a lack of unity and a need for coming together, at least we can start. Once you identify the problem, you can at least start to address it.
And then, too, we're involved with an organization on a statewide basis called the Midwest Building Decarbonization.
Yes.
And we term a mantra, you got to know before you go. We got too many people going, but they don't know why they're going. And you got to put them in a room and you got to educate them on what the issues are. Right. And sometimes even leaders close themselves off to wanting others to come in and educate because they're in this narcissistic attitude of thinking they already know what is already best. And they got to come out of those narcissistic attitudes from the standpoint that if you don't know, you find the people that do know, and you bring them into your setting to do the education.
Right.
It's time out for trying to be nice.
Right.
We're in a fight right now. I'll give you an example. When we was at the State House,
Monday.
I bet you most of your listening audience don't know. There's a Senate Bill 202 that's going through the House now, that's getting ready to tell these teachers you can't talk about black history.
Yes, the critical race theory.
Diversity.
Yes.
In other words, Ron DeSantis' attitude of Florida has now hit the red state of Indiana.
Right.
And we're sitting back and we don't hear anybody talking about it.
That's true. That's true.
They don't want to talk about it.
But and we appreciate it. And I know there's a lot of knowledge, but here's the thing. I'm gonna tell y'all, this is not the last time y'all gonna be here. We're gonna have y'all here multiple times because we had to continue to get this information out. Amen. We got to continue continue to push this movement. But we want to really get into this movement. Tell people about this movement, this event Saturday, how we can get people there. What are we talking about? And give us the whole scope of this movement coming this Saturday.
Okay, if you have Facebook, I'll start with you guys. Facebook.com/Indiana PPC. Go there. Go there to register. You don't have to register to show up, but we are meeting at the state capitol. The address is 200 Washington, and it will be a traditional assembly and rally whereby, we will point out the demands. Again, we mentioned several of them: the living wage, the voting, the health care, the Medicaid. We're not going to get into the details of what's happening with hundreds of thousands of people in Indiana who are getting cut off from Medicare.
I could talk to you about that because I know that I know that firsthand.
There are several demands, but back to registering. Register to participate in the assembly. Again, I gave the Facebook contact. We have. Do we have another? I have the QR code.
Yeah.
Maybe we could put the QR code.
We can post that on our website.
On your site, yes. And it's just the start of the 41-week of advocacy to the polls.
And this is going to take
starting.
place in 31 or 32 states simultaneously.
Yes.
In other words, everybody at the same time is going to hit their state capital, and we're going to talk about the demands for the Poor People's Campaign. And we're going to show them that poor people need to be heard, poor people need to be identified, poor people need to be helped. Many poor people are not poor because they wanted to be.
Right.
Their life situation has placed them in a precarious situation. And so therefore, the Bible tells us that the poor shall be with you always.
Right.
And so it is our job to take care of them, to help them, to give them a hand up so that they can do just as well as the rest of us.
And you know what? I think it was Frederick Douglass who once said, power concedes nothing without a demand.
That's right.
It never will. Okay, and it won't in the future. So what this Poor People's Campaign is all about, Dr. Barber and the leadership feels that if we have 140 million plus poor people in America, if we just got 10% of those poor people to the polls, we could change the face of everything in America if we get the poor people to the polls.
Yes, sir.
And that's why we're galvanizing the poor, because we sit in the seat of power.
Right.
And bringing the poor people's issues to the forefront. Because most of these folks, they're just sitting at home. They're watching things go by every day, knowing that they are trapped in the tapestry of poverty, hopelessness, and they don't feel that there's no way out. But then when Dr. Barber comes in and he gets the poor people to feel that they have dignity, they have worth, your voice is power.
Right.
We're going to help you to represent your community, to come and voice what's going on.
That's right.
All of a sudden, new dignity comes.
Yes, yes,
right.
yes.
The backs up again.
Right.
New hope begin to come.
Yes.
We bring in more hope back into this process for people that has been locked out and classified as the underclass in America.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
man.
I want to say one closing thing because it's interesting every time I hear it. But Reverend Dr. Barber says, I do not want you to be loud and wrong.
Oh.
Do not be loud and wrong. And that's why we have our fact sheets about poverty, not in the nation, but poverty in Indiana.
Right.
We have the fact sheets of health and its impact. And I mentioned earlier about translating. It's one thing to have all these facts and throwing them out at people and using those academic terms of ecological devastation.
Right.
But we need to
down.
translate those impacted areas of what is happening with them. So in closing, I would say that we are gathering in the Indiana State House. We are being on the grounds, as Dr. Forde said, we are with 32 other states and Washington, D.C. This is simultaneous
Yes.
march. It's a simultaneous assembly, and it's a simultaneous presentation of demands that support our interests and speak up for people. And one other thing, they're going to be presented in demands that we're not going to accept the fourth leading cause of death. We're not going to accept it. Poverty is abolishable. It's unnecessary. And we're just going to raise our voices. And it says, forward together.
And not
one step back.
Forward together.
Not one step back.
And forward together.
Not one step back.
And you know, Linda, and I'm glad you brought that up, because when we place these demands, what Dr. Barber is saying, we need a third Reconstruction.
Yes.
And this third Reconstruction is something that's different. We're saying that we don't want to just pick and choose. You do minimum wage this year and you do something else next year. Why can't we do it all this year?
Right.
If
Get it
this
out.
country can spend millions and billions of dollars to promote war in Ukraine, promote war in Israel, promote war all over this country, why can't we take care of the poor in this nation? We got the money to do it.
Yes.
But guess what? We got meanness, we have hatred, and we have greed sitting in the seat of power in every state in this union that want to overlook poor people.
Absolutely.
Amen. Amen. And again, I know we could go on for the rest of the day, but I thank you. And please, we're going to try to schedule something maybe post this event. However, you're doing anything throughout the community, throughout the year, we can have you come back and you can update us on things. As it get closer to the election, we can have you come, and if you have discovered something about the candidates that's running, we can put that out. Right. We just need to get this information and keep this information out for the people. And what Dr. Presley said is that if you got 14 million people, you said 140 million.
140 million.
149 million. You said if we get 10% of those to vote, that's 14 million people. If we got 14 million people to get out and vote, that can change the trajectory of this country. So to say that your vote doesn't count and your vote doesn't matter, that's not true, because there wouldn't be voter suppression. There wouldn't be these other things that try to keep your vote away. But we want to thank all three of you for being here. And again, please update us and please come back again. But we want to thank each and every one of you for being with us this morning. This was a topic that we needed to address this morning because this is an event that is happening. And if you can make it down to Indianapolis on March 2nd, the event starts at 11 a.m.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's at the state capitol. But we want to thank you all again, and we thank you all again. But one thing we always say before we leave our people, but I want to use your mantra again before I say ours. What is it? One step forward?
Forward together.
Not one step back.
One more time?
Forward together.
Not one step back.
Forward together.
Not one step back.
And as we say, always protect your mind.
Oh,
Thank
my
you.
God.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We are ready to wake the sleeping giant.
Yes, indeed.